Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. NaNuMyoHoRenGeKyo. Okay, I am starting the final collection I have, Book 6 of Nichiren's Gosho. And, well, there's quite a few. There's some really good Gosho. There's several in here that have to do with the characters of NaNuMyoHoRenGeKyo, Namu, and some not very well known, but some that you'll recognize Goshos here. The first one is a letter to lay monk Nakaoki. This is to actually this monk and his wife. They took up Nichiren's practice after their father, who's now deceased at the time of this letter, who was a longtime Nembutsu practitioner. They're just to set the stage. They all live on Sado, and this is where Nichiren was exiled into the northern island of Sado, in a little shack with holes in the walls. Anyway, you know the story. While he was there, he befriended this lay monk, Nakaoki no Jiro, I believe. That was the father, and Nichiren converted this man to Lotus Sutra practice, following Nichiren's guidance, scholarship, and doctrine. And consequently, so did his son and his wife, his son's wife. And so this letter is written to them, evidently after, I keep wanting to say Shakyamuni, Nichiren was allowed to leave Sado and return to the mainland. We know he retired up to the Mount Minobu area, and there was visited several times by the younger Nakaoki. And so this letter is written to him, and really, though it's addressed to him, it's mostly written not only for him, but for his wife as well. And of course, it's an opportunity for teaching. And teaching many times to the laity for Nichiren was in some form of explanation for what they observed his own life going through. Because that was the toughest thing, is to watch somebody who, any teacher who you respect, going through persecutions and travails, can make you question whether or not you're putting your own confidence in the right person. And so he finds himself explaining himself quite a lot through many of these letters, as you've heard. And no different here. But there are a few new points he will make along the way, so always something new or something interesting for us to glean from Nichiren's letters. So here we go. I've received the 1,000 coins that you sent me, and respectfully reported it in the presence of the Lotus Sutra of the Wonderful Law. So, as you might guess, when Nichiren received offerings from anyone, he immediately would place them in front of his altar and chant the Daimoku of the Lotus Sutra, taking nourishment and protections and whatever benefits and from those offerings as support for his mission of promoting, proselytizing the Lotus Sutra. So always the offerings are in support of NaNuMyoHoRenGeKyo and his position as votary of the Lotus Sutra. The country of Japan is located in Jambudvipa to the south of Mount Sumeru. Jambudvipa measures 7,000 ryohanas in both length and breadth. In it, it's the entirety of the earth. In it, there are 84,000 countries, namely the 5 regions of India, 16 great states, 500 middle-sized states, and 10,000 small states, as well as countless smaller states scattered about, like grains of millet, and islands like particles of dust. All of these lands lie in the great ocean like fallen leaves floating here and there on a pond. Our country of Japan is a small island in the Great Sea. It was once so small that it would disappear from sight when the tide rose, becoming barely visible only when the tide ebbed, until the two deities enlarged it to its present size. So this is part of local cultural lore, right? The goddess of the sun and the great Hachiman and so on. Its first human ruler was a great emperor named Jimmu. We've heard him talk about Jimmu before. For some 30 reigns after him, neither a Buddha nor sutras nor monks existed in this country. In other words, the ruler was the deity. Remember that this is what an emperor is. In the West, kings were imbued, or pharaohs were imbued with godlike powers and insight, right? Even when death parted them from their parents or siblings. I'm sorry, I skipped a sentence. Jimmu, for some 30 reigns, neither Buddhas nor sutras or monks existed in this country, only ordinary people and deities. Because there was no Buddhism, the people neither knew of hell nor aspired to a pure land. And he clarifies many times in this, we'll read this in a later Gosho, that hell and pure land are mental states within our 5-foot body, he calls it. In other words, these aren't other places. These are experienced within the self. Even when death parted them from their parents or siblings, they had no idea what would become of the deceased. They must have thought of death as something like the vanishing of dew or like the setting of the sun and moon. Then, during the reign of the 13th ruler, the great Emperor Kimei, King Seongmyeon of Pachki, Korea, a state northwest of Japan, sent to this country a gilded bronze image of Shakyamuni Buddha, a set of sutras expounded by that Buddha, a set of and several monks who were to read them to the people. However, the Buddha was a statue and not a living person, and the sutras bore no resemblance to non-Buddhist writings. The monks spoke, but no one could understand what they preached, not unlike the situation in India when Shakyamuni first started. Moreover, their appearance was neither that of men nor that of women. For all of these reasons, the people were doubtful and dismayed. The ministers of the left and right met in the emperor's presence and discussed the matter from various angles. The opinion prevailed that Buddhism should not be adopted, so that the statue of Buddha was discarded and the monks were imprisoned. A natural reaction to something you don't understand, right? It's crazy. Then, on the 15th day of the second month of the second year of Emperor Bidatsu's reign, Prince Shotoku, son of the Emperor Yomei, faced east and chanted Namu Shakyamuni Buddha, whereupon the Buddha's relics materialized in his hand. In the 6th year of the Emperor Bidatsu's reign, the prince read and recited the Lotus Sutra. Since then, more than seven centuries have passed, and more than 60 emperors have reigned, and Buddhism has gradually spread throughout Japan. Among the 66 provinces and the 2 islands, there is no place where it has not reached. In every province, every district, and every town, village, and hamlet, Buddhist halls, padyetas, and temples have been built, and Buddhism now dwells in 171,037 places. A lot of numbers in Buddhism. Persons of wisdom, as brilliant as the sun and moon, have spread Buddhism in generation after generation, and worthies who shine like the myriad stars fill every province. For their own sakes, they practice the true word doctrines, the wisdom sutras, or the benevolent king's sutra, or chant the name of Amida Buddha, or believe in Bodhisattva perceiver of the world's sounds, Bodhisattva earth repository, or the 3,000 Buddhas, or they read and recite the Lotus Sutra. But when they encourage the practice of ignorant monks and lay people, they merely say, just chant Namu Amida Buddha, or Amida Butsu. Suppose a woman has a child. If the child falls into a moat or a river, or if it is lonely, it will cry, "Mother, mother." Hearing this, the mother will never fail to set aside everything else and come to her child's aid. The same holds true with Amida Buddha. We are infants, and he is our mother. So, if you fall into the pit of hell, or moat of hungry spirits, just chant Namu Amida Butsu, and he will never fail to come save you, just as an echo follows a sound. This is what all these men of wisdom have always taught. Therefore, our country of Japan has long since followed the custom of chanting that phrase. Now, I am neither a resident of the capital, the center of the country, nor the son of a general on the frontiers. I'm merely the son of a commoner from a remote province, but I chant NaNuMyoHoRenGeKyo, which not a single person in Japan has ever chanted during the past more than 700 years. Moreover, I have declared that to chant the name of Amida Buddha as people do, revering him as they would their parents, the sun and moon, or their lords, feeling as though they had found a ship on which to make a crossing, water when they were thirsty, or food when they were hungry, creates the karma that will cause them to fall into the hell of incessant suffering. They were therefore as startled and resentful as if stones had been cooked in their food, with their food, as if their horse had stumbled over a rock and bolted, as if a gale had begun to blow while they were crossing a body of water, as if a great fire had broken out in a populated area, as if they had suddenly been attacked by an enemy, or as if a courtesan had become an emperor's consort. However, for 77 years, from the 28th day of the 4th month in the 5th year of Kencho, 1253, until now, the 11th month of the 2nd year of Koan, 1279, did I say 77? 27 years, sorry. Wow, struggling today. I have not once retreated, but have continued to speak out all the more strongly, just as the moon waxes or as the tide rises, as at first, when I alone chanted the Daimoku. Those who saw me, met me, or heard me, covered their ears, glared at me with furious eyes, contorted their mouths, clenched their fists, and ground their teeth. Even my parents, brothers, teachers, and friends became my enemies. Then the steward and the lord of the manor where I lived turned against me. Later, the whole province was in an uproar, and eventually the entire populace grew alarmed. Meanwhile, some people began to chant NaNuMyoHoRenGeKyo, either to mimic or to mock me, or seemingly out of resolve, or seemingly to disparage me. Now, 1/10 of the people in Japan chant only NaNuMyoHoRenGeKyo. The remaining 9/10 are those who chant both the Daimoku and Amida Buddha's name, those who are wavering between the two, and those who chant only the Nembutsu. People of this last group revile me, as though I were an enemy of their parents or their lord, or a sworn foe from past existence. Heads of villages, districts, and provinces hate me as though I were a traitor. As I continued to proclaim my teachings in this way, I have driven out I was driven out of place after place, forced to move on throughout Japan like a log adrift on the sea at the wind's mercy, or like a tiny feather that soars high into the air and then hovers about, now rising, now falling. At times, I was struck, arrested, wounded, or exiled far away. At times, my disciples were killed, or I myself was banished. Then, on the 12th day of the 9th month, in the 8th year of Bun-A, 1271, I incurred the wrath of the government and was subsequently exiled to the northern island of the province of Sado. Though I had never violated the secular laws, even in the slightest, the authorities accused me, saying, quote, "This monk has gone so far as to declare that the late lay monks of Saimyo-ji and Gokuraku-ji have fallen into hell. He is worse than a traitor." End quote. They were about to behead me at a place called Tatsunokuchi in Kamakura in Sagami province, but then they apparently reconsidered, thinking, quote, "True, his crime is indeed heinous, but he is a votary of the Lotus Sutra nonetheless. If we kill him rashly, there is no telling what disasters might befall us. On the other hand, if we leave him on a remote island, he will surely perish of some cause or another. Not only is he hated by the ruler, but the common people all regard him as they would an enemy of their parents. He will probably be killed or die of hunger, either on his way to Sado or after he's arrived there." End quote. Thus they decided to dispose of me in this way. And if you'll recall in an earlier Gosho, he gave a rather explicit account of the happenings of that day and how they allowed him to come down off the horse that they had led him to his execution with and allowed him a few last words, and he produced a sermon. And undoubtedly that sermon was able to sway the opinions of his executioners. And so this is another aspect of what he perceived happened, is that he changed their minds, basically. And so basically people were filled with fears. You got to remember, Japan was a fairly new shogunate state, and everything was being run instead of a saintly emperor or imbued lords. These lords were now in power by virtue of force, so heavily authoritarian, dictatorial kind of governance. And so everyone lived under the threat of a samurai's sword, right? And so fear was pretty prevalent in the society at that point. So if somebody as clever and as well-read and educated as Nichiren, who belonged to a class of people that were educated, most others were not, certainly not at the level that these teachers, these monks were, and he made some very good convincing arguments with the very Buddhism that they professed to follow. They could see that there was value in this man that they couldn't even conceive or understand. And so I could see how he could sway their opinion and think, we may be making a really bad cause here. Maybe we'll find another way to dispose of him without getting blood on our hands specifically, right? And so they put him on Sado Island in this little shack that you could see right through the slats of the walls, and they figured, well, whatever happens to him, it's not our fault. So he continues. However, possibly due to the protection of the Lotus Sutra and the 10 demon daughters, or perhaps because the heavenly deities realized my innocence, and although many of the islanders hated me on Sado, there was an old man called the lay monk Nakaoki no Jiro, who befriended me. That's the father. He was as wise as he was advanced in years, and he enjoyed robust health and commanded the esteem of the local people. Probably because this venerable man said of me, quote, "This priest can be no ordinary person," end quote. His sons did not strongly resent me. Since most of the other people were in the service of the retainers of the Nakaoki family, they too made no attempt to harm me on their own authority and carefully obeyed the government's instructions. Right? They had to. They're on Sado after all, so they're very much a territory belonging to the shogunate. So they don't want to make waves, but at the same time, they're kind of mild toward Nichiren. They don't carry the ire of the mainland. Though water may be muddied, it will again become clear. Though the moon may hide behind the clouds, it will surely reappear. Similarly, in time my innocence became apparent, and my predictions proved not to have been in vain. Perhaps on that account, although the members of the Hojo family and influential lords insisted that I should not be pardoned, I was finally released from my sentence of exile at the sole discretion of the lord of the province of Sagami, and returned to Kamakura. I, Nichiren, am the most loyal subject in all of Japan. So why does he say this? Because in comparison to all of these others who are practicing erroneous and misguided teachings of Buddhism, they don't bring honor to the land of Japan, nor dignity to their own lives, because they've been misled. And since he is the only voice of clarity, demonstrating the proper order of Shakyamuni's teachings and the culmination of those teachings in NaNuMyoHoRenGeKyo, he then is the only true son of Japan, because only he is practicing Buddhism correctly, and therefore, because we affect ourselves and our environment when we chant, he then is the foremost son of Japan. You follow the reasoning? I do not believe that there has ever been, nor will there ever be, anyone who can equal me in this respect. The reason I say so is as follows. When the great earthquake struck during the Shoka era, 1257 to 1259, and the huge, that's not how long the earthquake lasted, but in that period, and the huge comet appeared in the first year of Bun-ei in 1264, a number of wise persons, both Buddhist and non-Buddhists, performed divinations, but they could neither determine the cause of these disasters nor foretell what was to come. As for me, I secluded myself in a scripture library, and after pondering the matters based on the Buddhist teachings, I concluded that because the people revere the monks of provisional Mahayana and Hinayana teachings, such as true words, Zen, Nembutsu, and precepts, and make light of the Lotus Sutra, probably the most important part, the heavenly kings Brahma and Shakra would rebuke them by ordering a country in the West to attack Japan. I submitted a written warning to this effect to the lay monk of Saimyoji, now deceased. People of all religions scoffed at it and dismissed it, but 9 years later, in the 5th year of Bun-ei, an official declaration arrived from the great Mongol Empire, announcing its intention to attack Japan. Because my prediction had thus come true, the Nembutsu monks, true word teachers, and others resented me and plotted against my life. Interesting. They had a choice. They could have said, well, he obviously understands the situation better than we do. We should shift our focus to what Nichiren is indicating, right? But instead, their ego, their vanity, said, oh, no way, he's right and making us look bad. We won't tolerate that. So, doesn't that sound familiar? To give an analogy, in China, among the concubines of Emperor Xuanzong, there was a beautiful woman known as the Lady of Xiangyang Palace. She was the greatest beauty in the empire. The emperor's consort, Yang Kui-fei, saw her and thought, quote, if she's allowed to serve near the emperor, she will surely steal his favor away from me. There it is, petty jealousy, right? So she forged an imperial edict and had the lady's parents and brothers either banished or executed. The lady herself was imprisoned and tortured for no less than 40 years. My own case is similar to this. If Nichiren's warnings become widely known, the government will have to ask him to meditate for the defeat of the Mongol Empire, right? And if Japan should in fact be victorious, he will become the foremost monk in the country. We, on the other hand, will lose our influence and prestige, he's saying of these other leaders, right? So, thinking perhaps the monk of the other schools brought false charges against me, unaware of their motives, the regent believed their words and is now about to bring the nation to ruin. So they held sway in their opinion over the leader of the nation, the great family of shogunate that was leading the nation. They conspired together to silence Nichiren, in other words. In a similar way, the second emperor of the Qin dynasty of China, instigated by Cao Cao's slanderous tongue, had Li Tzu executed, and later he himself perished at the hands of Cao Cao. And the emperor of Engi, prompted by the slanderous words of the minister Fujiwara no Tokihira, banished the minister Sugawara no Michizane. Afterward, the emperor fell into hell. The present regent is just like these two emperors. He believes the words of the true word teachers, the Zen school, and the precepts monks and observers of the precepts, and the Nembutsu monks, all of them enemies of the Lotus Sutra, and treats me, Nichiren, with animosity. Now, understand, he's not saying that the Zen school, the precepts, the Nembutsu are by their very nature enemies of the Lotus Sutra. But certainly these teachers of these schools, these leaders of these schools, actively and in their doctrine substantiate that the Lotus Sutra is childish theory, not to be followed, or too lofty and not able to be followed by any ordinary humans. And with these kind of weird arguments, they move people to their way of thinking and claim their superiority. So they are enemies of the Lotus Sutra, either personally or through their teachings, their, quote, scholarship, right? Their erroneous, made-up scholarship. Although I am of lowly birth, I embrace the Lotus Sutra, with Shakyamuni, many treasures, and the Buddhas of the 10 directions, Brahma, Shakra, and the deities of the sun and moon, the 4 heavenly kings and the dragon deities, the sun goddess, and great Bodhisattva Hachiman protect and treasure, just as people cherish their own eyes, as the heavenly deities revere Chakra, or as a mother loves a child. Therefore, all these Buddhas and deities will punish those who persecute the votary of the Lotus Sutra. I won't lift a finger, Nichiren. But my dedication, my deep respect, my abiding resolve in NaNuMyoHoRenGeKyo means that I am protected. And whatever these assailants, to the degree they fight against me, they will incur their own wrath. They're causing their own pain. It's not me doing it. Follow? Just like all of us. We cause our own suffering. And therefore, only we are capable of attaining our Buddha. No one can push us into it. Nobody can dissuade us from it. It is ours to have and to experience and to awaken. And whenever we're not awakening it, then we're submitting ourselves to suffering. That's what all of this is about. Even more severely than one would chastise an enemy of one's parents, or than the ruler punishes rebels. Now you two are the late lay priest Jiro's son and daughter-in-law. It is perhaps because you are the son and daughter-in-law of so profoundly wise a man that, following in his footsteps, you not only believe in the Lotus Sutra, which the ruler of the country himself rejects, but also provide for the votary of the Lotus Sutra, me, Nichiren, each year bringing me offerings and traveling 1,000 ri to see me. Moreover, on the 13th anniversary of the death of your infant daughter, you erected a 16-foot wooden grave tablet with the 7 characters NaNuMyoHoRenGeKyo inscribed on it. Wow. When the north wind blows, it is said, fish in the southern sea who are touched by it will be released from their suffering. And when the wind comes from the east, birds and deer in the western mountains who come into contact with it will escape from the realm of animals and be born in the inner court of the Tushita heaven. These are all life conditions, right? Experienced through the mind. How much greater still will be the rewards of those human beings who rejoice at this tablet, touch it with their hands, or gaze upon it with their eyes. I believe that because of the benefit derived by your erecting this wooden tablet, your deceased parents must be illuminating the path to the pure land as brilliant as would be the sun or moon in the heavens. Furthermore, you yourselves, the filial son and his wife, as well as your children, will live to be 120 in this existence, and after death you will be with your parents in the land of Eagle Peak. You should consider this to be as certain as the fact that the moon is reflected in clear water, or that a drum produces a sound when struck. Should you erect any wooden tablets in the future, be sure to have the Daimoku of the Lotus Sutra inscribed on them as well. Written at Minobu, Nichiren. Wow. That's interesting. That's the first time I've read any letter from Nichiren where he discusses erecting one's own sacred tablet with the Daimoku on it. NaNuMyoHoRenGeKyo. All 7 characters. He doesn't say 5 or 6. He says 7. You erected a 16-foot wooden grave tablet with the 7 characters NaNuMyoHoRenGeKyo. So that's amazing. And once again, feeds my repeated argument that this mandala is a universal mandala for all of us to have. This is why I make it available online. I make it available for you to simply order on cafepress.com/gohanzon. Get your own. Enshrine it properly. Do the eye-opening ceremony, a full gangyo. Chant for 30 minutes. Make sure you're personally connected to your mandala, which is a reflection of the Gohanzon, your Buddha wisdom, your Buddha-ness in your samsaric mind. And here he is, giving nothing but praise for those who will do that for themselves. Because that is a commitment, a determined, resolute act to your Buddha nature, to your enlightenment. That's quite exciting. I'm glad I read that one. I hadn't read that one in many, many, many years. Okay, well, that's one more out of book 6. The next one will be This Person Advances Through the World. Yeah, I think I saved a lot of good ones for this final book. Thank you so much for participating. Your support is precious for all of us for this Sangha. Take care of your health, be kind, and I'll see you in the next one. NaNuMyoHoRenGeKyo.